Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He has worked for ECW as well as multiple promotions across the independent circuit. Pleased to welcome the one, the only Tommy Cairo to the show. Welcome, Tommy, to Wrestling with Heart.
What's happening? How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You shoot, bro. Ask me anything and I'll answer. And if I get long-winded and I get off track, just cut me off. I may forget where I'm at, so try to pay attention.
I will. Well, let's start by talking about your childhood. Where are you from?
I grew up in Essex County, New Jersey. Although we were maybe 25 minutes outside of New York City, it was still a suburb. And we grew up, we had fields that we can play in and places that we could go. And it was a great, great childhood. I grew up on a street basically around the corner from where I lived, Mitchell Street. And that's where all my cousins were. And it was, I mean, all I can remember is hearing that screen door slam behind me, and it was like the old adage, when the street lights come on, you get your ass home, you know what I mean? And that's how I grew up. We watched All in the Family, and I was born in 58, so I'm 66. So you imagine, in the 70s, I was young, and my childhood was it was a little tough. Without going into too many details, but it was a little rough. I grew up in an Italian American neighborhood, and almost everybody was a gangster, a half a gangster, had some scam going, skimming off the top of some business, just the way life was. I had to change that many years later because that's not the way to live, but to us, it was survival. And that's what I did. I came up through Olympic style weightlifting. And by 1974, I had gone to 3 junior Olympic national championships. I was always in the top 3 in the country for those 3 years. I had a childhood idol, Phil Grappoldi, was an Olympic style weightlifter. And he was a champion. And he was actually, I believe, spanning 12 years, 3 Olympics as a weightlifter. And he was our idol. And we had a gym that we didn't have to pay for. It was under the bleachers, the concrete bleachers of the stadium, high school stadium. Underneath, there were, workout areas, but it's one specific area where we trained with the weights. And that's where we came up. And in my town, you lifted weights at one time or another. There was just no two ways about it. And I like to say where boys became men, really, in that place. That's really the truth. And then after I got a little tired of the Olympic weightlifting because I would kind of liked bodybuilding, and I would read the magazines that my father would get, and I was more leaning towards wanting to be a bodybuilder. So long story short, I entered the Mr. New Jersey for the first time in 1983 in my 3rd competition ever, and won the middleweight class of the 1983 Mr. New Jersey bodybuilding championships. Thank you. And then I went on and on. Mr. America finals. I went to Pan Am Games in bodybuilding of Acapulco. And then I broke into the wrestling business in 1986. Basically, I've been a fan, and I'd known people in the business. It was an old-time jobber, Tony Colon, Johnny Rod, so I'm sure you know who he is. Mm-hmm. I knew all these people, and I met Gary Capetta, the ring announcer for WWF and also WCW. at my high school when I was a kid, and he used to let us get in the back door. He knew I was a fan, and by the time I broke in, they all knew me as that. They used to be that skinny kid, And here he is. So I was like, I was welcomed. I've been in and out of locker rooms way before I was a worker. So it was an easy transition for me. I got trained by Rocco Rock, that's Ted Petty from Public Enemy. I was trained also by Bobby Bold Eagle, who was an international star way before it was even traveling everywhere in the world. South America, you name it, Japan, England. And, that's really all I ever wanted to do before I even knew that I might have a chance at doing it. I had already become a physical specimen through weightlifting. And when I showed up at a local show, like the promoters were like, "Oh, who the hell is this guy?" And nobody. If I was on a boardwalk in major shore town for 8 hours, you might see one other guy go by that looked the way I looked. I just, when you're 5'9", 240 pounds,
Yeah,
not fat.
you're huge,
Yeah, I
and
had to be. I
hmm
had to be.
yeah, I guess it's fair to say, getting into weightlifting and athletics was provided that escape for you from all the negativity that you were around during your childhood and
Yeah,
early years.
I'm alive on spite. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like everything I ever aspired to do, I mentioned to some close people, and nobody ever said, "Oh yeah," until they saw that. When you said, "Well, how are you going to do that?" I did it. It's all done. It's all already done. I did it all. Now, it might not have been the best motivation to do it behind spite, but I got the job done. And I have a reputation in the business that I always tried to help guys. I never put myself ahead of somebody. If they deserve to be there, they're there. It's just that I tried so hard to always leave it all in a ring, and I always did. I'm beat up, beat down. I got a cage, 2 bars, 2 replaced discs in my back. I got a new hip on the left, an old hip on the right replaced. I got one leg, and here I am. And you
Yeah,
know what?
you're a
Here's the,
survivor.
you know what I am? I'm Iron Man. That's what I am. Everybody that knows me says, like when I was really having a hard time, when I was depressed, I had a couple of people who knew me and said, you're the Iron Man. What are you doing? Like you got us through everything. You're always strong. We look to you. You can't fall. You got to come on. And I've been through depression. I beat diabetes, depression, and drug addiction. I have a story to tell that is just ridiculous. But by the grace of God, I'm here. Here I am. I got this. You see this? You know what that is?
Hmm.
That's the old Ever Ready battery logo. It's a cat with 9 lives. You know
Mm.
why? Because I'm just a cat with 9 lives. That's all I am. I'm just some dude with 9 lives that pushed the limit and everything he did.
And
And
you're still standing with us today. And
yeah,
I want to talk about, you'd mentioned you were always a wrestling fan growing up. You broke in the business, new people. What was it about wrestling at a young age that you were mesmerized by and just
I'll give
fascinated
you
with?
one name, Bruno Sammartino.
Hmm.
Now picture this: they never reran those original WWF tapes. So if you saw something, you weren't likely to ever see it again. And if you didn't see it when it happened, you weren't going to see it. It happened during those tapings, and those tapings were never replayed ever anywhere. You might be able to find them now on YouTube, but here's what happened. Bruno Sammartino, of course, was the champion at the time. He had a kayfabe cousin who was actually Tony Parisi that they called Antonio Pugliese as Bruno's cousin. So big match they've been talking about for weeks. Baron Miguel Cicluna and King Curtis against Bruno Sammartino and his cousin Antonio Pugliese. So we're waiting. This is the week. And now time for the big match. And, so they announce King Curtis, Baron Cicluna. They come out, everybody boos them, And then they announced Antonio Pugliese from wherever, Italy, the cousin of Bruno Sammartino, Antonio Pugliese. And he comes out, and there's no Bruno. And I go, we're waiting. Wait a minute. We just got word from the back that Bruno missed his connection, and he's probably not going to make it here on time. Well, the heels, they jump on Antonio, Bruno's cousin, and they put the boots to him. All of a sudden, the ring announcer, who at that time was Ray Morgan, the show was Heavyweight Wrestling from Washington, D.C. And he turns and he goes, wait a minute, here comes Bruno now. And he comes through the door with his suitcase with like his tie hanging out of it. A suitcase. He comes up in the ring. He just got in from the airport. He goes in the ring, and him and his cousin are back to back, and they fight the heels off, and everybody goes nuts. I'm screaming in my bedroom. My mother comes running in. What's going on? I said, Bruno. She said, you're driving me nuts with this stuff. Oh, my God. She said, I'm going to let you. Now, instead of like stopping me, she encouraged me by getting my uncle, who got me into watching wrestling at 10. No, I started at 8 watching it. 10, I went to my first live match to see Bruno. And my uncle took me. And my mother called my uncle and said, do me a favor. I know you go every once in a while. Take him with you because you drive me nuts. Let him, maybe, I don't know. She said, maybe he'll do something with it. All those years ago, a skinny kid. It looked like I was from Biafra. I won my junior Olympic title at 120 pounds. 120 pounds. Now you're talking 120 pounds later, and hard work. When people say, oh, we're steroids, listen, I took steroids because I had to. I was already winning titles in small competitions without taking drugs against guys that were taking drugs because I had the ability to get shredded, 5% body fat. When somebody says I was 2.9, there's no such thing. The body doesn't function below 3% body fat. So these people that get these calculations, I don't know where they get them from. But that being said, the next step, if I wanted to keep competing, was to do that. And that went hand in hand in the wrestling business. Because if you're not 6 foot, you better be, whatever you are tall, you better be as wide. So I was practically 5'9" by 5'9". And the good thing about that was, like, you look at Taz, right? How short Taz was. And because he was stocky and he was built and he had a really over gimmick, okay, you never looked at him and even was in there with Bam Bam. You never looked at him and said, what the hell is he doing in there? Because he was like a little, and that was me. That's what I was. I knew that working out, training with weights, gaining muscle, and getting bigger was the only shot I had to stand out because I wasn't tall and just had over the top intensity. When I did a promo towards the end, I got way better when I was working for Frank Goodman, USA Pro Wrestling. And I used to hate ECW when you do your promos, all the guys, in other words, the camera's facing you, all the guys are behind the cameraman. And you're trying to get it, it's late, it's 1 a.m, you're trying to get, 1, 2 takes. And everybody starts moaning. If it's not, you don't like it, you want to do it again. And I'm like, I finally,
it's anxiety producing because you want to do a good job.
Yeah, and I can't, well, everybody's looking at me, and so when I was working for Frank Goodman and he put his title on me, I would grab the guy and say, come in here, and we'll go in the shower room, in the hallway where there's nobody. And then I could do my thing. And if there's we got to stop or we got to do it over or we put it, piece it together. Usually I was one shot pretty good,
When you talk about promos to you, what makes a good promo?
Uh, you're exuding. See now, here's a dichotomy. I believe the closer you are to your character in some way, even if it's an alter ego or your subconscious that you don't act on daily, but through your gimmick, you get to be that nasty guy or that. The most over guys are the guys like that. Stone Cold. That's pretty much Steve Austin. I mean, I think he'll admit that. You know what I mean? So when you get the ability to do that, and that's only if your actual character normally is that over the top in so many ways, then it's okay. You know what I'm saying? You just you're portraying either at a magnified pace, you know, what you already are. And
Turned all the
here's
way
the thing.
up.
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep your promos or uh, yeah, um, close to the truth or similar to a situation you've had that can be useful, you tailor it to that. But so in a way, it's an extension of your personality. Usually, you would think of an actor or a worker to be considered really good, and their character and uh, is such that it's such a far cry from what they really are. That's what makes them such a great actor. But that's not wrestling. Now, wrestling is different. You know, you're playing a part, but the more it's like acting, the more impressive it may seem. But I think it's harder when you pull from your own lifestyle, your own life. It's easy to remember stuff. You know, when you're making stuff up, whether it be for a character or you're just some pathological liar, you know,
I mean,
you don't remember.
you think
Yeah,
back to like some of the legends and some of the great guys on the mic. Roddy Piper, perfect example. You know, he just shot from the hip, said what was on his mind, and the fans still remember those
yeah,
classic moments, those Piper's pits, those
yeah,
in-ring promos that he would do. Still to this day, people will remember those because of how
yeah.
good he was.
Because that was him pretty much. Again, you're like, let's pick the top 10 guys. All right. Look at Ric Flair. Tell me his character is not him. His whole character is him. That's that's who he is. There's no difference between the Ric Flair in the ring and the Ric Flair outside the ring. I mean, I think that's to his detriment. I think he looks ridiculous and foolish, and I mean, I could never see myself put myself out there like that. He should be retired. I think he's been living this lifestyle so long that he has no choice. That's what he does, And I have a friend. I won't mention the name on air because it's not right. But anyway, I'm trying to help him right now. Actually, I'm in the process of getting him hooked up with DDP. Now he knows Paige. They know each other. Somehow, I just can't get him to get on the phone. I can't do it. If I give you the info and you can't bring yourself to do it, and we got no hope. You know what I mean? So
Let's
anyway, let's get back on track where we were.
Yeah, yeah, because I want to talk about your career and what you've done in the business before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the training experiences and process, learning how to wrestle, because it is intense. You're at a wrestling school or you're setting up rings. I've had people on the show talk about training on the road, basically learning on the job. What was your experience like learning how to wrestle?
Well, you have to understand this. I was a superior athlete. My wife will tell you she was a star softball player. in the snow. She's at 240 pounds. She said, "I'll race you." And I never remembered that said this not too long ago. She told the story. She goes, "You smoked me. You left me like I was standing still."
Mm.
I was just a freakazoid. I would lift weights that were ridiculous. I could break shit, bend shit, lift cars, trucks, lifted back of trucks, cars, you name it. And I always had that strength. So the training for me, by the time I broke into wrestling in 1986, I was an amateur wrestler in junior high and high school. I was a junior Olympic national champion in weightlifting. I was a black belt jiu-jitsu. I was dropping people without hurting them on their heads and backs and stuff in the yards as a kid. By the time I got in the ring, which was on the boardwalk in Seaside Heights, New Jersey, in the heat of the day, uncovered where that canvas would get so hot that we would have to hose it down before we could actually lay on it and work out. I trained with Ted Petty. I knew Gary Capetta. Gary Capetta owned the pier on the boardwalk in Seaside Heights, New Jersey, where this ring was set up to run shows through the summer. So I didn't break in that there, though. I broke in at Sussex County Horse and Farm Show up in Sussex County. We got up there for some reason. It was Jersey, so I don't know why we didn't think we needed EKGs, but I was new. They put 6 of us in the back of an EMT van and drove us to the hospital. We got EKGs in the hospital, and then they drove us back. And the guy's putting up chicken wire. There was a stadium there, and the ring was set up on the track, and he was putting up. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "These people, they don't see nothing like this here. They get crazy every year." I'm like, "What?" Sure enough, it was a captive audience. So in other words, during the fair, they make an announcement. Over in the rodeo thing, pro wrestling show starts. And man, it was nuts. And that day, I took home, I drove Ivan Putski to the airport because I was living in Newark area. And he took, was flying out of Newark. He sat in my back seat, talked about himself the whole way, and left orange and banana peels on my back seat.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, you couldn't talk. All he did was talk about himself. But that was my first show. I was in a tag match with my trainer under a hood, Teddy, and another guy against me and a student. And that man, you talk about within 6 months, Ted Petty, gave me and a guy by the name of David G, the masked Russian, the Volvo van with the ring, and said, "Take these dates and you go up New England." And like a couple times a year, we'd be gone for 11 days. We go up Burlington, Vermont. We were all up that way by
the Northeast.
Yeah, but up by Lake. I forget what lake was up there. Whatever's up there by Burlington, Vermont. And it was great because we literally go to the building. I say it's day one, Thursday night. We used to do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Thursday, it's Thursday night. We get to the building. We set up the ring. We train in the ring. We go back to the hotel or the truck, depending on if we were leaving at night, how far of a ride, and then go relax. Go back to the building, work the show, tear the ring down, put it in the truck, and either sleep somewhere or go to a hotel or go to the next spot. And it was great. It was the best thing I ever did. And I excelled very, very quickly. Like, let's put it this way. I could do a kip up. They call it a nip up now. There's a kip up. Before I knew anything about wrestling, we had tumbling. And I could lift flat back without using my hands and kip up. So even though I got bigger and more muscular. I did so much stuff all along that journey of 90, 110 pounds that I always acclimated to it. You know what I'm saying? I,
Yeah, you
I,
progressed. It was a
yeah,
seamless transition because you were in weightlifting and you had grown up around athletics, so it was a
yep.
natural fit.
And, I was very lucky that way. And we talk about the people I came up with. Forget about it. The people that helped me. I mean, you got Larry Sharp, you got Johnny Rods, you got Davey O'Hannon, Ted Petty, Bobby Boldy. I knew these guys since I was a kid, except for Teddy. Was only a few years older than me. But to this day, I just went up to a wake for a guy by the name of Pete Reeves. Now, you would have to know the history. He was a jobber kind of guy, and the reason he used the name Pete Reeves was he had a little black goatee and he looked kind of like Steve Reeves, the old bodybuilder guy. And became friends with him. I'd go over when he was at his aunt's house. I'd go hang out and talk to him about wrestling. And then years later, I brought him to one of my shows and gave him an award, and he was in tears. He was like, "I can't believe you're that little kid that used to come over and bug me about wrestling." And I'm like, "See, this is what it's about. When you find out, when you're in this business and you find out that some dude is in a locker room, isn't in it or didn't get in it the same way you did and doesn't even know much history. And you could throw a big name that he should know out there and he wouldn't know." And I'm like, "Why are you doing this? We don't need people like you. If it's not in your heart, you don't love it, you didn't, you don't get into wrestling at 30, 25, 30 years old if you weren't a fan? How does that happen? Those are the guys who don't make it." You know what I'm saying? Because I think you have to know about it. You have to want to know about it. I have a book upstairs, 1930s Alabama, 1930s,
Hmm.
telling you all the matches that were recorded and who was the promoter. And it just grew from there. And I enjoy that. I don't care. I'm not going to win I probably could win a trivia or, historical questions, but it's not the point. The point is, you should be well versed in every way you can if you're doing this, trying to make a living at it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're very passionate about the business. And who are some of the people you've gotten to share the ring with, be in the ring with over the years that you enjoyed
Wow.
working with?
Superfly Snuka, Iron Sheik. Iron Sheik, I loved Iron Sheik. We're all up to work with him. Don Morocco, Eddie Gilbert. The list goes on and on. I mean, it really is I have to look around. The Pitbulls, Public Enemy. Um, I'm looking around my room. There's everybody's a bunch of people. Curtis Hughes was great. I used to love to work with Curtis. I liked working with Sandman. I really did. Manny Fernandez and we battled for years because you know what? Everybody was afraid to work with Manny because if a promoter brought Manny in, a lot of times they might have brought him in to make their guy look good, which means Manny's putting the guy over. If Manny has to put the guy over and he tests him in the first few minutes in the match and this kid ain't worthy, the kid ain't getting put over, or he's going to get hurt first, or at least stretched to the max. And I appreciate that. And they said Cousin Luke, remember Cousin Luke from the
Hmm.
Hillbillies? He
Yeah,
said,
Bushwhackers, right?
no, Cousin Luke from the Hillbillies.
Oh, okay.
All right. So he said when he ran his shows, that's the only thing I could do if I had Cairo. If I had Manny, I had to have Cairo. If I had Cairo, I had to have Manny because I really couldn't put them with anybody else because we wouldn't get the best match. And it became after a while, everybody just associated me with Manny, and working with me was going to be just as tough. So one time, Manny goes like this, shh, and the kid's over in the next locker area. He goes, "Did you see that guy, Cairo? He built like a fucking man. He works with Manny every show." He goes, They beat the shit. Did you see their match? They goes, I ain't never gonna work with those guys. Oh, man, I go like this to man. I go watch. I go around like I just came out of nowhere, and I got a piece of paper by me. I said, "Hey guys, there's been a couple changes tonight. You're working me, and you're working Manny." The kid was like, "What?" I was like, "Nah, bro. I'm only kidding." He goes, "Oh." I said, "What? You don't want to work with me?" He goes, "No, it's not that." I go, "No, it's all right. I understand." But that became my calling card. I worked with Big Dick Dudley from the Dudleys. I mean, working with him is like, we're just going to break the place apart. We're going to break everything. And that was my role. Almost most of my career was, along with the moonsaults and 10 kinds of suplexes, was Cousin Luke, in that ever present gym teacher's locker, office. Come on in, guys, me and Manny. Move a little furniture. And I don't know if you know that term, but moving furniture is break the place apart, move some shit around, don't hurt nobody. Because he knew we could do that, And that was our role. We were the furniture movers. And if we're doing it, nobody else is doing it. Not like today, the first match, they're grabbing chairs and tables. You got to know your role, man. It's either you're a curtain jerker, you're a popcorn, or you're semi, or you're main. And everything in between has to be a graduation,
Yeah, it's a process. You're moving up the ladder, moving up the card, so to speak, and it takes years to get to that level. But you've had, so many years where you've been able to wrestle so many guys in different places on the card. So you've had some experience.
Yeah, and I was lucky that they said right off the bat, put this kid, put him up there right off the bat. I was like, maybe I went in a couple shows where I was like in a battle royal and maybe, didn't have a big role, but that was very early and very far and few between. I was very lucky. But, I could deliver. They didn't, if I couldn't, then I wouldn't be in that spot and I wouldn't be making $100 my first show, my first few shows. That was the rate for, a worker, just regular worker, just coming up, or that's what it was. It was $100. Almost everybody. Do you know the Savoldis, who are notorious for not paying, gave me 60 of 100 that they were supposed to give me? But even at 60, there's kids today that work that don't make $60. You know what I mean? So, and when I promoted and ran, that's another thing. I ran my own school. I had my own promotions. I made sure that those guys got paid a decent wage. Again, getting back to Paul Heyman asking people to do things, forcing people to go do things, coercing people to do things that maybe if he had ever laced up the boots and worked for any great length of time, got stretched, got potated, gave back, maybe he would, look at things a little bit different. But so many guys, I won't say sold. Yeah, I will say some guys sold their souls. Just like this whole P. Diddy thing, and you hear these Justin Bieber sold his soul. I feel like that about Heyman, and I'll go public about it. I do. I think he did a lot of dirty things, and a lot of it was not pretty. And I wasn't always present because I separated myself. Do you know from the start, I think 3 years in ECW, I never went in the back door. You know why? That's where the trouble was, going through the back door. I came through the front where the fans would come in and went straight back to the locker room. Now, whatever I did, but I didn't do things in front of people. If you're doing something that's not the best thing to be doing, you don't do it in front of 20 people. You know what I mean? This whole business has been wrought with women across the country for 50, 60, 70 years that have been the ring rats, which are nothing more than someone's daughter, niece, sister, aunt, mother. And you're doing these things, and it's been going on for years, and it's been accepted like it's okay. And I'm not with that, man. And that's why I didn't roll in certain circles, because I'll hang out and party, but I was with my wife when I broke. Well, I had broken in '86, and we met in '89. And I've been loyal to my wife since I met her. So there's none of that stuff that went on, or snorting this off a woman and prostitutes and all this other crap. I mean, I'm not with that, and I'll stop that anytime I see it or know about it. And that's why a lot of stuff went on that I didn't know about, because they knew. Don't let him find out, because I would have rocked the boat, and they didn't want the boat rocked. They wanted to just keep doing what they were doing. A bunch of degenerates, really. There's only a few guys in that locker room that were worth their salt as a man, for real. Only a handful, and those are the ones I was friends with mostly. You know.
Let's talk about the stuff that you've done as far as charity work and volunteering and helping others. I mean, you had mentioned your wrestling school that you ran for a while. Let's start with that. What made you decide you want to run your own school, and just how
Well,
you've, been able to give back to people over the years?
Well, what happened was, a friend of mine, Dan Brown, who ran a production company out of Atlantic City. I was running the Tropicana Health Club and also ran shows there. And he and I became very good friends. He taped a couple of my shows, videotaped. And then he said to me, I got this building in Egg Harbor City. Why don't you put a wrestling school in there? Because he knew my ambitions, and the biggest thing back then was, you know, getting a building that you could afford. So he said, listen, I don't want anything. You set yourself up in there. If you're going to do anything, let me videotape it. That's great. Started Force One. Force One ran for 7 years, man. 2007 to 2014. And then we went from, we sold it. Well, we stopped running the school. The problem I ran into, I was running the school and running the promotion. And really, the school was paying for everything. And I had a bunch of guys. We had 2 rings going in Ocean in Egg Harbor City, New Jersey. It was awesome. We used to tape vignettes outside the building. We went up into the cemetery that was close by, taped some stuff, and it was great. It was great, and everybody used to come down. We had Balls Mahoney was down there. Superfly Jimmy Snuka was down there. Chris Candido and his brother Johnny, Equalizer, you name it, over the years. And that was the hard part, because I think the promotion it's like a money pit, because but I did do this, came up with things that nobody had done before. The 2-sided vinyl lawn signs, pro wrestling. Nobody did that. And I started putting them up on the circles, and tie wrapping them to signs so they wouldn't get taken down so easily, and replenishing them when I would go by and they were down. Or maybe the landscapers came, they cut the tie wraps so they could weed whack around the signs. You got to put them back up. They're $8 a piece. You're tending them. You're like they're your children. I did things like walk in and out of mom and pop business and pre-sell tickets on the premise that you could be used for marketing purposes. First 100 person, 10th person in the store today gets 2 tickets. So they'll give you money up front. And then it does 2 things. It gets people in the building, and it gets me some seed money in the beginning to get the posters and buy more and get the tickets done, get the chairs, the rental, whatever, the ring rental. So, we did that for a bunch of years. I started in 2000 with Outlaws Wrestling. Then we went for 2 years. And then in 2007, we opened Force One Pro Wrestling. We rocked the Eastern Seaboard indie scene. We were the place to go and the place to be. Then we morphed into Coastal, and we ran a couple different buildings regularly. And then I pulled out in I think it's probably 2014. But you can go on YouTube and look up Force One Pro Wrestling, look up Coastal Pro Wrestling, and you'll see, all our stuff. That's all our stuff. Um, so I mean, I've done it all, man. I've been out putting. Listen, I raised $1,000 in sponsorship money with a walker after I had hip surgery, going up and down the sides of highways and putting friggin' signs out. So
Yeah, I mean
I know what you got to
you,
get out there.
yeah, you do. And you know, you've earlier we were talking about, you've helped so many people over the years outside of the business as well. Let's talk about that, what
Oh,
made
real
you,
quick, what I want to tell you is the whole time we had the building with the school and we were running shows, we must have had 30 local kids come through there that did everything from sweep the floor. We got them in the ring and let them move around and fool around a little bit. They were kids that were lost in the neighborhood. That while we were there, we were a safe haven. I would have 8, 10 kids hanging out, you know, and it was great. I loved it. They were like my little kids, and even to this day, people are so appreciative. And I feel bad a lot of times. I don't remember everybody because there was so many people that were affiliated with us while we did that. And our hearts were always with the kids. You know what we took? We took the overlooked, the underrated, the overlooked, people that for stupid reasons in indie wrestling couldn't get work because they were good. And they made the other guys who were friends of the promoter, all these marks that are trying to run schools and run wrestling. And they're very good. They just never were put in the right spot. We made all those kids shine. Took White Lotus, made him our junior heavyweight champion. Another guy who was Brian Pillman's cousin, James Pillman. There were our 2 trainers. Both of them were trained by Les Morgan, who is Heidi Lee Morgan was a pro wrestler, a female, very prominent in the 80s. That's her father that trained them. And he trained guys for Vince's father back in the
wow,
60s.
wow.
So the lineage, and that's what I tell anybody that trained under me. When you go out there to work, you know already what's right, okay, because you were trained by us. So now that you got cell phones, it's so easy. If you go to a show and you think that they want you to do something that you're not sure you should do, you should know because you were trained properly, but pick up a phone and call somebody. And then you go to the promoter, and this is what I always tell these guys. The promoter's asking you to do something that either makes no sense or is not professional or whatever. And the promoter says, well, people say, well, you got to listen to the promoter. No, if the promoter's a complete idiot, why would you listen to him? That's when promoters were really promoters. We were always about the kids, always about the kids. So does that bring us maybe up to the present, if you want to do that? So I always have people that I'm kind of mentoring, being only slightly removed from my own issues. You would say, well, just a couple of years ago, he was doing this. Why are you going to listen to him? That's why you're going to listen to me, because what I was doing, people don't get out of and get away from. I did. Okay. And I didn't do it. I kicked the sheets. Okay. And if you don't do that, I think like the thing with addiction, and I worked in the prison system as a counselor. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I believe take a heroin addict. 6 years he's clean, right? That means there's nothing in his system that is making him want to. It's coming out of his system, and to feel good, he's got to do it again. It's been out of his system, and then one day he decides to go do heroin. Oh, it's the disease of addiction. No, you had a choice and you made it. That's the reality of it. That's why I can help people now because I'm so only 2 years removed. But you have to look at what I'm 2 years removed from. At an age of 66, one legged, heart, this, that, bang, boom, and I'm still here. So yeah, listen, if you go to the prison system and you say, there's a drug addict or drug dealer, whatever, Mr. Cairo has been through the program. It could be your counselor, or we have little Miss Jane here that went through to college and got a degree, never took a drug in her life. Who do you think they're going to want to talk to? To say to the girl, what are you going to tell me? Oh, don't do it. How do you know not to do it? Did you ever have that shit in your system? Do you know how hard it is? The books don't tell you that. Okay, I'm not listening to it. I'm going to listen. Get me somebody that I can relate to that's done it. Now, I have two friends in my circle, one from the business, one not. They're my ride or die, both of them. They're still tied up. And I get offered, even though they know that that's not the right thing to do. They do it anyway because they know I'm a man. And I think they want to test to see, is he still doing the right thing? Yeah, I am. So now you have an example. You can say, look, he ran with us. He ain't running with us no more. I could do that. Maybe I could do it. If he did it, I should be able to do it. Or if not, let me ask him. Let me confide in him. Let him tell me I'm full of shit so I could get on with it and get help and get better. So many sick and suffering people in church. I go to Bible study, prayer. We take prayer requests. Everybody's got someone who's dying, sick and suffering through alcohol or drugs in the church. Everybody has one. I got 5 people I could name. 5 people who need help now. One of them is my age. How he hasn't run out of time yet is beyond me. He got up at 7:50 last night. And then he calls me. He don't call me until 5 in the morning. I'm like, I'm sleeping. I want to help you, but it's been 3 days. I gave you DDP's number and you still haven't called him. I can't make you do that. I can't. And maybe I would have to say to him, you have to start weaning that stuff out of your system. Now, how do you take a guy that's been doing for 30, way over 30 years, taking sleeping pills, taking painkillers, and drinking alcohol? You'd think without help, he's going to listen and say, all right, well, cut the volumes in half, then take one every other day, then do the same thing with the painkiller. No, he can't do that. There's no way he can do that. You're not going to do that. The only way you're going to do it is if somebody takes you with them and clean out your shit, your bags, and keep an eye on you and make sure that, and as soon as you look like you're high or we know you're high and we test you, you're on probation now. And the next time you're gone and now you're on your own because there's rules. If you're not going to follow them, you're not going to make it. So my model would be the tough love. If I had a place, which I was working on, a rehab specifically for people in the wrestling business. You know why none of it works when you see Dr. Drew and all. Anytime they have a wrestler there, they hardly ever make it because you're treating Hollywood people and then you're adding in wrestlers. It's a whole different, this is a hybrid person, a pro wrestler who isn't drug addict and after all these years and is still doing the same thing. That's a hybrid, man. That is not even a diagnostic in the DSM. There's no category for that. That has to be created. And believe it or not, I would treat a lot of these illicit guys that used heroin and used crack cocaine and used speed. I would treat them some of them with cannabis. Because the reason a lot of people can't get clean that use illicit drugs, you've been tapping that pleasure zone in your mind all these years, in your head, your body. And now you're trying to do nothing. That don't work. So you need something. So I believe cannabis can help a lot of people. and it'll be a departure from what they've done. It's legal in a lot of places. You could prescribe it medically. That's not saying everybody that comes through the program. Certainly, anybody that was a hardcore illicit drug user could get off of all of that and then use marijuana. They don't have to use it. They could get away from it eventually. But to get you away from that, you need something to look forward to. Even like cigarettes, it's a ritualistic thing. I'm used to when I travel, I gotta have something. I might smoke a black and mild cigar, drinking something, snacking. I always feel like I gotta have something going on. And people that were addicts, that's a big part of it. It's like always looking for something. Like I'll find myself, I ordered food, and then for a little bit, I forgot that I ordered it. And then the doorbell rings, and I'm like, oh, I got that food now. And then, well, what's going to be next? Well, I just ate. I feel like I want to smoke a cigar. And then I go outside. So it's, you know, sometimes you substitute one thing for another, but a lot of times it's a lot lesser evil and it can help you. This is what I found. And for me, I tell people, no matter where you go, there you are. People want to move. People want to go somewhere else. I got to get out of here. It doesn't work. You bring your troubles with you. You bring your head with you. You got to change the mentality. And I'm right now. I got I would say now the Lord puts these people in my path all the time. I have an ongoing 3-4 males that I talk to, that I meet with at the bay. We hang out, we talk, we help each other, and I happen to be somebody who's in a position to help these people or to lead them to getting some help. But I got to watch I don't put myself in harm's way, and I can't take time from my family.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, I'll give you the info, but I'm not going to get on the website for you, and you do that.
Yeah, they've got to put in the work.
Yeah, if you don't know how, get your wife like I do when I don't know some. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I love these people that just listen, in general, people are weak. And that's why they have so many issues. I have been through and overcome so many things in my life. And the Lord has shown me that I'll keep you here if you keep trying and your heart is in the right place. And that's what I do. And here's the difference. I don't get too crazy if I can't help the person and something happens to them. I don't take ownership of that. Okay. I just had a kid last year, Billy Real. I know him since he's 15. And I talked to him 23 hours before he OD'd, which we don't know if it was accidental or on purpose. He could have got a bad bag. He could have done it on purpose. We don't know. But I've seen it, and it's happened to me too many times. And even with this one guy now that I know for so many years, it's been occupying my mind. And I'm like, I got to do something for this guy.
Yeah,
so what I decided I was going to take him to my place in Virginia and make sure he's got nothing on him and get him through 5 days of feeling like shit and be there for him. But then a good friend of mine said, that's not your place to do that. He said, so I decided to call DDP. And that's what they're in the process of setting up now. I hope. I sent them another message today. Call DDP today. I don't know what else I can do.
Yeah. Well, we hopefully, your friend is able to get the help he needs with your guidance, and hopefully with his guidance as well. We can, he's in good spirits and good health. That's all we can wish for. So I want to say real quick, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and to my viewers. Where can people find more about you on social media or how they can reach you?
I'm on Facebook. I respond to friend requests if I see somebody I got similar friends and they're in the business or around the business or for any reason. But other than that, I don't go crazy with a lot of that. Like I said, I'm on Facebook. I don't do Twitter. I don't do any of that other stuff. Okay. And if I'm easy to get a hold of. So if you want to, go into anything else we didn't go into at any point in time, you let me know. I'll be glad to do it.
Yeah.
As you
We'll
can
do.
see, you don't have to worry about me talking.
No. We'll do a part two. Again, thank you so much, and you're more than welcome to
You're
come back.
welcome.
All right, thanks again.
You're welcome. Take care.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.